using samples from several different districts, and additional refinements are encouraged, which is why we're sending it out way ahead of when we actually wanted to vote on it. And Mr. Chaffo is the new head of critical issues. Can I ask that anybody who has suggestions or comments forward them to you?
Sure.
Are there any other questions on that board goal?
No,
Making
thank
sure
you.
we do what we say we were going to do, basically. And that was my only unfinished business, so we're up to committee reports. And I believe we have Mr. Raya, you had an update?
I have two things. I think I'll start with the PAL since it's a little shorter. I went to the PAL board meeting last week. It was on the 16th. And one of the big parts of the meeting was Nick Bronzino, who was the interim executive director, was voted on by the board and made executive director. He's done a great job. He's been very aggressive in pursuing new opportunities, including meeting with maybe one of the committees on the school board, perhaps the sports committee. And but he's been looking, for all sorts of different opportunities with a lot of other entities. Some of the events that are coming up, there is a business speed networking and lunch event on February 13th. There is a blood drive on February 4th, which I think I've been away from that for a while. I'm going to get back into the blood donations. There is a fundraiser for the PAL wrestling group, which is going to be also on February 4th. There is a number of programs that are going to be announced in the near term. So we haven't gotten them yet, but I'll be able to talk about that at the next board meeting. That is on the PAL. And then in addition to that, I attended on January 8th the School Funding Reform Act hearing, which was down in Somerville. It was the second of 4 hearings that were occurring all throughout the state so that people didn't have to drive 150 miles to attend one of the hearings. So I attended. There were about 60 people in attendance, and there were administrators, superintendents, Board of Education members. There were some concerned citizens of the public, and that all spoke up. Some towns had multiple representatives, and once everyone from a town was able to speak once, then other towns were able to repeat. But it was interesting to hear some of the thoughts. I am eternally grateful for the way our administration manages its finances, and that's a hat tip to Robin. And so that is one of the things, because many districts have a lot of problems, and there was one school district that mentioned laying off 27 teachers in the middle of the year. That's like, whoa. And many pay to play in order to raise funds for various sports events and activities. So this was the second of 4 meetings. So the last 2 have since occurred since the 8th. So now I think the Department of Education is going to gather all of this information, basically the comments, the hearing of the public from 4 different locations. And then the Department of Education will probably then liaise with the legislature. I don't know how all the sausage is going to be made as far as this goes, but it's probably not going to be pretty to watch. But we'll see if there is. The last major legislation was the State Funding Reform Act of 2008, so it's been a while. It's time. We know that there's problems with it, and a lot of the other towns had the same issues that we had. So it was your recommendations were excellent. We seem to be the only school district, at least nobody else mentioned it, as far as like having a pilot problem. We seem to be pretty special as far as that goes. Nobody else had that. So anyway, but that's about it on that.
Are there any questions for Mr. Aya? Mrs. Mayor, you had?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. On January 22nd, the ad hoc committee for the superintendent search met. Present were Mrs. Kogan, Mr. Chaffo, myself, Mr. Rea, Mrs. Benos, and Mrs. Tedesco. Let's see. You have a copy at your seat of the rubric that was sent, that we used to kind of rate the different firms when they sent their proposals. There were 10 RFPs sent out, and 3 search firms responded that they had an interest in working with us. The committee reviewed the information from each firm using the rubric, and that was designed at our first meeting, and all the information that was sent to us from each firm. The committee discussed each firm's material as well as assigning the scores. One firm rose to the top both in scoring and overall impression. And it was interesting because when we did our rubrics, we each did them independently. You know, I don't know how Allison scored or Andy, so it was interesting that this one firm kind of rose to the top. The plan now is to invite the representative of that firm in for an interview with the committee. It's my report.
Thank you. Any questions? Does anybody else have another liaison report? Dr. Wright?
Yes, I attended one of the 2 initial January meetings of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging committees. I attended the one at the High. I wasn't able to attend the one at the Hills. This is a really interesting set of work led by staff, but with a great deal of student involvement and student leadership. At the meeting, work that was done last year, kind of emphasizing some professional development that was undertaken, as well as student work. And particularly, there was a great deal of discussion around last year's kind of belonging emphasis, where high school students went to elementary schools and read to the students about picture books about themes of belonging and inclusion, and previewed plans for the upcoming year to both do the same. And also the students expressed a great deal of excitement and looking forward to the joint high school retreat that will be happening in May.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Wright? All right. I know I don't chair any committees, but I just wanted to give an update on additional activities I've attended or events happening in our schools. On January 7th, I attended a workshop titled Building a Culturally Responsive Arts Education Program. There wasn't a PowerPoint or anything that I can share, but I did send Mrs. Benos the link to the next steps within that program, which were really geared toward more administrators and not geared toward board members. On January 9th, I attended the Kiwanis Club of Persiphone's meeting as their guest speaker and provided them with information about the board and the district. They asked lots of questions that were very good, and I appreciated being able to explain what the board actually does. During the meeting, they also gave an update on what the K-Kids Club in the district were working on, so it was really nice to hear how the community is connected with our schools. Last week, Ink Flow Magazine Club from PHHS presented a story writing workshop to the to the 3rd graders at Intervale Elementary School. Ink Flow Club members created characters, setting, and plot twist cards for the workshop to teach kids about the fundamentals of writing a creative story. It was interactive, where the 3rd graders received these cards that the club members made, created their own stories based on the prompts, and then even switched stories with other students and added on to each other's stories. Then the students had time to illustrate their stories as well. And it's great to see the older students working with the younger. As Dr. Wright just said, there's several programs in our district that are doing that, and it's really nice. And that was it, unless somebody else has any other liaison. The next is approval of minutes for the regular and executive minutes of January 7th, 2025. Can I have a motion for that? Mrs. Mayer. Second, Mr. DeVito. Roll call.
Mrs. Abraham?
Yes.
Mr. Barrios?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayer?
Yes.
Mr. Rhea?
Yes.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Yes for regular, abstain from executive.
Dr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Chaffa?
Yes.
Mrs. Kogan?
Yes. Now we're up to the superintendent's bulletin. Dr. Sutter?
Thank you, Ms. Kogan. Good evening, everyone. I've been continuing my administrative observations with principals by visiting schools and speaking with staff and viewing lessons and programs, and things seem to be going very well. January is Muslim History Month. As such, we stated at our last board meeting, January is Muslim History Month, and as such, the district has taken time to honor and celebrate Muslim heritage, history, and contributions with our students. Parsippany Women's Club Spelling Bee. On behalf of the Parsippany Women's Club, I'm excited to share the results of their fifth annual Spelling Bee, which occurred on Friday, January 10th, 2025. First place went to Rishi Arvinda from Northvale School. Second place went to Connor Zhang from the Intervale School. And third place went to Margot Tobias from the Knollwood School. Congratulations to the first place finishers and the second place finishers and third place finishers and all who participated. And a special thanks to the Parsippany Women's Club for supporting this wonderful tradition. Tonight, for your approval, we have Superintendent Bulletin items 1 through 39 with addendum and read-in items 40 to 52.
Are there any questions or comments on the superintendent's bulletin? Seeing none, we'll move to the secretary's report. Mrs. Tedesco?
Hi, everyone. On tonight's Secretary's Report, we have our regular business motions, including the approval of the Parsippany High School MD classroom renovation, application submittal to the state, and, well, the NJDOE. Does anybody have any questions?
All right.
Thank you.
I don't think there was any new business for tonight, so we will go to the hearing of the public. At this time, if there is anyone who would like to address the board, please come up, sign your name and address in the book at the lectern, and state your name for the record. Please address the chair. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak to the board. It would be helpful if you would like to address the board to please come up now and sign the book so that you're ready when the first speaker is finished. As a reminder, we are video recording this meeting. If you're a student who wishes to speak, we ask that you not provide your home address, but rather give only the name of the town in which you live. If you're a parent wishing to discuss a specific matter pertaining to your child during this portion of the meeting, you may request that the board temporarily suspend the video recording. Alternatively, please consider speaking privately about the matter to the superintendent after the meeting. Speakers should refrain from using specific student or staff names in their comments and are referred to Bylaw 168 for further information regarding the videotaping of our meetings. Is there anybody from the public who would like to speak? Okay. So we're up to the roll call vote for Superintendent Bulletin number 11, items number 1 through 39, with addendum items 40 to 52 and read-ins. May I have a motion? Dr. Wright, second by Mrs. Cheadle. Mrs. Abraham? Oh, I'm trying, really. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Abraham?
Yes.
Mr. Barrios?
I'm going to be a no on Appendix A, abstain on number 22, yes to everything else.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayer?
Yes.
Mr. Rhea?
Yes.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Yes.
Dr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Chaffa?
Yes.
Mrs. Cogan?
Yes. And now I don't think we have anything else. I would like a motion to go into executive session for student matters, and action will be taken at the conclusion of the executive session. So can I have a motion, Mrs. Chappelle, and a second, Mrs. Mayer? All in favor?
Yes.
Keep reading. We need there will, I said that. Don't scare me. The next-
No, they'll take like 3 days from now. We'll be back on Sunday.
I'm not used to you being here.
That way.
I'm telling you, I'm making my way there. You're not careful, push right into you.
No, I did not.
Yes, can I have a motion to reconvene, Mrs. Chappelle? In a second? Mr. DeVito?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have the two resolutions with respect to the HIB hearings that were held tonight. Items number 53 and item number 54 with respect to the superintendent bulletin number 11. Number 53 is the HIB hearing on D18 PHHS 8. Be it resolved that in accordance with 18A 37-15 and following a hearing on the merits, the Board of Education hereby affirms the administration's HIB determination for case D18 PHHS 8 on January 23rd, 2025, as it pertains to student number 40531 pursuant to Board of Policy and applicable law, and be it further resolved that the Board Secretary is hereby directed to provide written notification to the parent of the Board's decision. Need a motion and a second.
For separately?
Call a motion and a second.
May I have a motion for number 53? Dr. Wright, in a second. Mrs. Mayer? And we roll call on that, or we do the other one?
Roll call.
Okay, roll call on number 53.
Mrs. Abraham?
Yes.
Mr. Barrios?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayer?
Yes.
Mr. Rhea?
Yes.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Yes.
Dr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Chapa?
Yes.
Mrs. Cogan?
Yes.
Resolution number 54, be it resolved that in accordance with NJSA SA 18A:37-15, following a hearing on the merits, the Board of Education hereby affirms the administration's HIB determination for case D18 PHHS 8 on January 23rd, 2025, as it pertains to student number 40520 pursuant to board policy and applicable law, and be it further resolved that the Board Secretary is hereby directed to provide written notification to the parent of the Board's decision.
So can I have a motion on number 54? Mrs. Abraham, and a second by Mr. Rhea. And then roll call, please.
Mrs. Abraham?
Yes.
Mr. Barrios?
Yes.
Mr. DeVito?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayer?
Yes.
Mr. Rhea?
Yes.
Mrs. Chappelle?
Yes.
Dr. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Chapa?
Yes.
Mrs. Cogan?
Yes. And there being no further business, I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Mrs. Mayer, and a second, Mr. Rhea. All in favor? Aye. This meeting is adjourned.